Hey everyone, look who it is.
Am
Chris Fenwick, and he's not driving.
maybe it would be maybe things would be going more smoothly if I was.
No, that was funny last time.
Yeah, I can't remember how that happened. I think you sent me a message and said, "Do you want to chat sometime?" I said, "How about now?" And I was
Yeah, no, I think I called you because the Mac Pro was just announced and I wanted to get your opinion.
right.
And just happened to catch you when you were driving home. And you said, I didn't know you were driving initially, but then I saw you in the car. I said, please be careful.
Yeah, it's that's the weekend commute. The wife and I, we try and get out of town, and we our home is out in Sacramento, but we both work in the Bay Area, and it's about a 95-mile drive. Uh, and it takes, on Friday afternoons, it's like a 3-hour drive. It's ridiculous.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, California is a hellhole. It's horrible. And I've lived here all my life. And in the last, I'd say the last 5 years is the first time I thought that, you know what, I'd actually like to get out of here. I don't know that we can because of kids and grandkids and stuff like that, but I'd move in a heartbeat if and not to mention work. I mean, all my work is here, but yeah, if I could, I'd get out of here in a
Where'd you
heartbeat.
go? Texas?
Maybe Texas. Yeah. Some,
Austin?
I don't know about Austin. I'll tell you. So my wife and her sister are giant fans of a show on like the Home and Garden channel called the show's called this is so not what I thought we were going to talk about. There's a show called Fixer Uppers, and it's this couple, and they help couples buy old crappy houses, and then they fix it up and they remodel it. And he's a very frugal contractor, can do things very cheaply. She's a very talented designer, and between the two of them, they make
Right.
lovely houses. And they're actually in Waco, Texas, and they are so enamored with Waco, Texas, that when J Lo contacted Joanna Gaines and said, "Will you please come to California and do my house for me?" J Lo said, or Joanna Gaines said, "No, you don't live in Waco. We only do homes in the immediate area."
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a major worldwide celebrity. And as you know from, I guess it was about 20 some odd 25 years ago, there was the David Koresh Waco, Texas thing. And
Right, right, right.
Waco's like the punchline of a million jokes. And so yeah, I mean, we talk about it all the time. Let's just go to Waco. I mean, you could buy a house for pennies on the dollar there.
Was that right? Because of the Waco, Texas thing?
Well, no, I don't think it's because of that. I think it's central, it's Eastern Texas. It's just, I mean, literally I can uh yeah, I mean, it's very inexpensive, especially by California standards.
Okay.
Yeah, the Bay Area is stupid expensive. When we moved to Sacramento, one of my neighbors said, "Well, I don't understand you." He didn't sound like that. He just said, "You work in Oakland. Why'd you buy a house out here?" And I said, "Well, for starters, it's $1 million less. It's literally $1 million less, and I have more land and more bedrooms, and it's not as nice as some of the houses here, but it's $1 million less. And now we have all this craziness with these power shut off, the random power shutoffs because of wind events.
So what is going? I mean, that is incredible that that happens. I mean, last year we went to the summit. It was foggy, smoggy because of the fires, the smoke and all.
Yeah.
But this year, you know, do
Okay.
we have electricity at the summit this year? That's what I'm wondering.
So here's what I'm going to tell you, and now we're branching into no agenda territory, and you and I both know what that means.
Yes.
In the morning. So this is what's going on. In about approximately 20 years ago, maybe about 17 years ago, there was rolling blackouts in California,
I remember.
and the utilities told us that the rolling blackouts were a byproduct of uh, um, the fact that They had prematurely shut down a couple of power stations. They couldn't generate enough power. So during the summer months, there was such a draw on power because of air conditioning units, and they were reducing power capability. And what it ultimately turned into was, well, we can get more power, but we're going to have to buy it from out of state, and your rates are going to go up. So as it turns out, the key to the whole story was your rates are going to go up. And Enron turned out to be behind it all. And if you remember your corporate shill history, Enron was proven to be an absolute scam. And ultimately, the rolling brownouts were also proven to be a total scam, absolute fraud. It was just a way to charge Californians more for money. So if you think about it, supply and demand, if you artificially hold a product back from a client, a customer, you can charge them more for it because there's less supply, demand goes up, you can charge more. I'm telling you that nobody's proven it yet, but I, as sure as anything, will tell you that that is exactly what's happening here. It's exactly, now, Enron's obviously out of the picture. They're long gone.
Right. It's just PG&E, is that what it is?
So it's Pacific Gas and Electric is randomly shutting off power. And when you read the news from the rest of the country, you read about these wind events. Oh, well, there must be high winds. I was at my mom's house 15 minutes before they shut the power off. We were an hour and 15 minutes after they said this was the last potential shut-off time. My mom's 87 years old. She has an elevator to get up and down in her house. If the power goes off, it's very bad for her. I was sitting there with her. I go, Mom, I think it's going to be okay. So I got to go home. I have an hour and a half to drive home. I leave. I find out later the next morning, the power went off 15 minutes after you left. When I was there, there was zero wind. Now, she lives on the coast. Okay. She lives like 500 yards from the beach. Zero wind. And that never happens on the coast in California. I was watching leaves absolutely not blowing at all. And it was ridiculous. It was just absolutely ridiculous. But so and then the other thing, I'll tell you another thing. I know people that have been newsies, like they drive satellite trucks, and when there is an event like you're reading about on your end of the country, the California wind event, sure as anything, reporters are going to go there and they are going to be standing in the wind. They're going to have their network windbreakers on the hood on there. We're standing here in front of the wind event. And there was none of that on any of the news. Nobody was bright. There was reports. Well, there's reports of 50-mile-an-hour gusts on the top of Mount Tam. Well, why isn't there somebody there? Because that's what news people want to do. They want to show the destruction. But no, there was none of that. So the wind event is a complete scam. I'm just saying it. And Bill Johnson, the CEO of PG&E, should probably go to jail. And they will prove it eventually. He'll be long gone with his golden parachute because, I heard one person say this, and I've not seen anything to corroborate this. But apparently, somebody was saying, "Well, what they're doing, we're still generating power, but we're now actually." It's the reverse of the Enron scam. We're actually selling it out to other people because you can't just, we don't have giant batteries. When that water comes out of the dam and generates power, it has to go someplace. And I've heard somebody say, they're actually selling it, in other states or something. I don't know. But it'll come out. And right now it's a scam. And they're saying that today is another wind event. I live literally on our apartment here in town is literally on the San Francisco Bay. It's
no wind.
Not even breathe. So anyway, I was hoping, and this is kind of a joint hosty thing. I was hoping that what we could do is share how we each do what we do in the Final Cut 10 community as as everybody knows, when Final Cut 10 came out and Apple's voice was squashed and not allowed to really talk about what they were doing, what they were trying to do, how they were trying to change our world. They needed a voice, and initially I thought, I like talking about Final Cut 10, so I want to just start recording these conversations and sharing them.
Yep.
And I did that for a couple of years, and then I stepped out and you stepped in. So it's been nice to have I use a millennial term, a safe space to to talk about what we do here. I think my levels are too loud. So you're doing mostly, I think you're doing these live video streams. I'm still doing just audio because that's all I can figure out. But I was interested in what you do, and we were basically kind of thinking, well, maybe we'll just do you called it the CrossCast,
Right.
where we explain to people how we do what we do.
Well, first off, the audio is by far more popular than the video.
More. What do you?
Audio podcasts are way, way, way more popular than video podcasts.
Well, I think it's because, and you made reference to me driving and doing a video chat.
Right.
I think it's easier to listen to a podcast.
Exactly. People can do their exercise. They can clean the house. They can go for a walk with an audio podcast where they can't with the video. You had to pay more attention to it. So
yeah,
yeah.
And I think that one of the things that I have always done, and I joke about it that I have one of the worst podcasts in the world because I don't put a lot of I don't edit it. I barely edit it. I top and tail it, and I do a few sound effects. I very rarely cut anything out. When I do, they're awful edits. It's not like it's. I have a job, right?
Yes,
so I have a job.
Exactly.
And I always tell people that if you want to do a podcast, you have to design a production workflow that is sustainable. And if it's not making a ton of money and you have to go and do it in your spare time because you still have to go to your job, don't put so much time into it that it's not a sustainable thing. You got to commit to this thing for at least 50 episodes, one a week for a year. You got to do that. And it has to be something that's doable. So my intention in putting together the audio podcast is just make it easy. And in a typical interview, when I finish that interview and I say, okay, Richard, talk to you later,
right.
I can have that thing posted and downloadable in iTunes in about 20 minutes. And if it took more than that, and the times that it does take more than that, I just want to kill it. Like in an audio podcast, in order to try and make it sound good, you want to get the recording device as close to the person as possible.
Absolutely.
So
yep.
In the audio world, a lot of times people do what are called double enders, where I'm going to record my thing, you record your thing. We'll listen to each other over Skype. But then when I'm done, please send me your audio file. I'm going to sync them up, and I'm going to. Turns out, double enders are a pain in the butt to edit. There's skips in the digital thing. Things get out of sync. You're doing it's a nightmare. And so I'm not going to spend an hour or more. It probably takes about 2 hours to clean up a double ender, or at least the ones that I've done. That's what it took. Maybe I'm just dumb, but I'm just going to take what I get. So a lot of times, there's dropouts and all kinds of stuff messed up. Where are you going, Richard? Oh, you're Richard is now cleaning up behind himself. I'm sure he's cut off of his camera, but I'm going to narrate. Oh, very nice patch. Well done. I was going to say, what about the thing about at the bottom and that's covered by your body? Okay, that looks much nicer.
Yeah, I didn't realize until I just was looking there. I said, wait a minute, I forgot to put the other panel back up in there. Yeah.
I got to see something you didn't get to see, everybody. So anyway, I try and develop a production workflow that is suitable to the income that the podcast generates. And since it generates almost no, I'm not getting paid for that time. So I'm
right.
It's got to be simple.
Yep.
And And that's the nice thing about what you're doing, spitting it out live. At least the lion's share of it's done. I know that you probably do some work to move that file around because you initially do these. Let's talk about what you do for a second. So
Okay.
you're doing two-way Skype interviews, or sometimes I've seen you with like 3 or 4 people, right?
Right. Right.
Okay. And how are you getting all of those different feeds in?
So I'm using a piece of software for the streaming called Ecamm Live. It's now a subscription. Okay.
Okay.
It's a subscription. I bought it a month or 2 months right before it went subscription. So I have a perpetual license for it. So I don't
Love.
pay the subscription fee. I just made it in. I didn't know it was going to go subscription, but I just bought it. And about a month later, it went subscription. Now it's not. I have a perpetual license for it.
That's awesome.
So that uses a Skype call recorder, and somehow it brings the Skype feeds, everybody's Skype feed into Ecamm Live, and I can do everybody individually, have individual feeds for everybody that comes in on the Skype call, up to 5.
Now, do you have to and we can kind of geek out here a little bit. I know that there's a piece of software from New Tech called NDI.
Y-
And does Ecamm have to use the NDI plugin?
NDI is some kind of yes, it uses NDI in Skype. Absolutely.
So NDI is a plugin that will take the individual feeds off, and I literally just learned this last night. It'll take the individual feeds out of the Skype call, separate them into separate streams, and then you can then patch those into Ecamm.
Yes.
And there's other ways to do that. I know that a lot of people use OBS, Open
Yes.
Broadcast Software, or something like that.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of the gamers use. And so, but NDI, as it turns out, is the key to making that stuff work.
Now, see, you just taught me something. I didn't know what NDI was. I know I had to have it turned on, but I didn't really pay attention to what it was.
So it is a plugin created by New Tech, the people, the video toaster people, and or what are they called now? Streamcaster, Skycasters, the something caster.
Right.
And they wrote that code and have made it available. And so it's kind of, I know that OBS uses it, and apparently Ecamm uses it. And there is actually a button up here that says stop NDI. And you were like, no, don't.
You had to do the call over again.
And apparently you have to place the call. If I call into you.
That's correct. Well, it's if you call into me, I can answer your call, but that'll disconnect me from the group that I make. So when I first start a group call, I invite all the people in Skype to the group.
Okay.
And then I call the group as a video, call. And if somebody doesn't make it, I could recall them later. But if somebody else calls in and I answer that call, it'll disconnect the group.
The house of cards comes down.
Yes. Well, at least I can go back, it seems like. I had that trouble at the beginning where I couldn't figure out how to add somebody after I started that didn't make the initial,
How much time do you think you put into figuring out how to make all this work?
years. I started, well, think about it. I started 3 years ago at this Creative Summit. I think that's the first time I started streaming.
Was it 3 years ago or 4 years ago where you and I sat down at the hotel across the street from NAB? We were at the Faster Together
Right.
stage, and I was showing you, I think I had the Mevo cam.
Yes, I remember that, sure.
And we were doing that, and we were sitting at the bar at the hotel, restaurant, whatever.
And Photo Joseph was across the way.
Yeah.
That's the first time I got to see him live. He's
Right.
a friend of yours, apparently, and also he was on the Final Cut Pro team. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he well, not so much the Final Cut Pro team. He was Apple's primary demo guy.
Okay.
Beneath Steve. So Steve would go out on stage at a keynote, whatever, at Macworld, and he'd say, "Oh, well, look at this new thing, and we do this, and blah 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 blah, and that's what we have new for you today." Everybody'd clap, and they'd get up, and they'd walk out at Macworld, and they'd walk out to the show floor, and that you'd go to the Apple booth, and it would be Photo Joseph, Joseph Nashke. And I asked him, I said, "How come you don't use your last name more often?" He goes, "Because nobody, including myself, can spell it."
Right.
Nashke. So Joseph would be on the stage in the Apple booth, and he would be doing the exact same demo that Steve just did. So that was his job for quite some time until he, in the trailing years of Final Cut Classic, they started to pull back, and it wasn't really obvious even to the people there what was happening. But it was some early warning signs that Final Cut Classic was coming to an end. And his job was not necessary anymore. And not to mention, Apple pulled out of the trade show business.
Right, exactly.
And that was like his primary thing, is demoing at the trade shows and stuff. And so they were killing off that job, but they tried to keep him. They offered him like 3 or 4 different jobs, and none of them offered enough travel, and he loves to travel. So he graciously bowed out and went and started his own thing.
Okay.
That's the Photo Joseph story. There's a whole story about how the first time I worked with him, he was demoing Final Cut, and I just assumed he was an editor because he was really smooth. And then a year later was the launch of Aperture, and I go back to shoot a seminar with him on Aperture, and I'm like, "Wow, dude, they taught you all this stuff about photography?" And he goes, "Oh no, I've been a photographer for years, for decades."
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, how did But what about all the video editing? He goes, "Oh, I'm not an editor." I said, I thought you were an editor. You
Right.
totally fooled.
Right.
I'm an editor, and you completely fooled me." And he goes, "No, I just train. I learn the software, and then I teach the software." So he's phenomenal. He's very, very good at that thing.
So I had Michael Cioni on last week, and one of the things I didn't know about him was I asked him, "Well, do you edit?" He goes, "Yeah, I edit everything. Everything I put out, I edit every single piece." I didn't know that.
I actually heard that. I dropped in on your conversation very briefly, and I heard that very bit. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I knew he did tons of other things, but I didn't know he did editing himself. He said, "No, I do it all. I do all the editing." So that was really cool.
Back at Light in the middle of the Light Iron days, he did this one demo once, and it was brilliant. Like, I watched it and I went, "Damn," and I rewound it and watched it again. And they did a thing where he shot a shot on camera, and then he cuts to a B camera, and he walks up to the camera that shot his shot, and they pull the mag out of the card, or out of the camera, and then he walks over and he hands it to a guy at a Light Iron station, and he starts the ingest. He makes a window dub. He posts it to their iPad app, and then he walks to another desk, and a guy is dropping it into a timeline, and then he walked over to another place that had a big screen. Maybe it was a giant screen, whatever, and they played it, and then it was all one. It turned out it was basically one continuous shot almost.
Wow.
And it was super slick. Very, yeah. Michael's a interesting guy. Okay, so we got, when we first logged on this morning, we started talking about audio.
Yes.
And we both know that audio is a very important portion of what we're doing. And the other day you were telling me about the audio unit that you're plugged into. So what's the signal path for your microphone?
So we both have Neumann TLM 103s. By coincidence, we both have those, right?
Mine is a very tiny one.
Yeah. I think before you said it was a TLM 103. I thought it was. It's a Neumann, right?
It is. I thought it was like a 102, but
okay,
I don't.
Maybe it's a 102 then.
Is 102 and a 103?
There's two of them, yes.
Okay. So yours is one better than mine then.
Well, mine is the one that's just when people say, well, I don't, they don't know what, they know what SM57 is, 58. I say, this is the one Howard Stern uses. Except he has it upside down. He always has it. It's a TLM 103.
Oh, okay.
When you ever see him on the new setup he has in the studio. But that's not the reason I bought it. I bought it because I went through tested microphones, and I was going to get the AKG 414, whatever it was, or this one. I wanted a good, but the salesperson talked me into this one. So I like this. So this goes into the Aero UA audio device. Now, the Aero UA
UA,
has
Universal Audio.
Universal Audio. So if you go uaudio.com, that's where they are.
Okay.
It's a whole plug-in platform that they emulate hardware, classic hardware pieces, compressors, EQs, tube emulation, tape decks. The difference is between them and like I have Waves as well. They have a chip inside the unit that just processes the software plugins.
Right.
That's what it's dedicated to. That's all it does. So you virtually can run these software plugins live like I'm doing right now. It's not like the normal thing you got to bounce tracks and it's just the delay. There's such a microscopic technical delay that it sounds live. It is basically, it's live. So that's called digital signal processing, DSP.
Now, I've played around with taking my feed, running it into Audition, plugging in a bunch of, put a little gate on it, put a little compression. And as you add effects, the latency starts to build to the point where you can't monitor it because you sound stupid. So
exactly.
If anybody has ever tried to do this, what you find out is that what you'll find is that if you're not listening to yourself live and you're hearing yourself slightly delayed past when you actually said it, you literally get stupid because you are hearing yourself and your brain can't process it. And that latency, that delay, is very important to minimize.
Exactly. That's exactly correct.
Your delay is nothing, is what you're saying, or so slight that it's not perceptible.
So like you said, you're taking your microphone out of the mixer, going into software, coming back. My microphone coming out of the mixer is processed. So stage one, my software plugins are already processed into the mix.
And the UA Aero, it's just a little box that sits on your desk, right?
Yeah, I just showed it to everybody on screen, just a quick one.
Oh, okay.
And it's a Thunderbolt 3.
Nice.
Which makes a difference. And it has 2 preamps. So the UA, United Audio Aero, they just come up with 2 new desk models yesterday, but they're a 4 and an 8. I don't need that much right now.
Right.
So the UA, when the signal comes out of the box, if I wanted to, I can process the software emulation plugins in real time. So the signal that comes out of this box, it's like coming out of the mixer, is already processed.
Gotcha.
And there's virtually no delay.
So from the UA box, it goes FireWire into your computer.
Thunderbolt 3, yes.
And then you select that as your audio source in the Ecamm software.
No. See, this is where... So I have a whole mixing board. As a matter of fact, I'll just show this real quick. I have a whole mixing board with plugins and emulations and stuff. People now can see that on screen, my different compressors and stuff. So what I do, because
are these outboard compressors, or is
these are all the software emulation compressors?
Okay, and so which mixer is that?
This is the software called the console for UA.
Okay. So when you say mixing, not a piece of hardware. It goes into the computer through the UA software.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So since I have Skype and I have guests, I take the output of the Aero analog out and I put it into another USB device. So I have a separate mix there with my mic and my guest's mic. And if I play back a video, for example, that audio, which is just a Scarlett, it's a Scarlett 2i4, I think.
2x4, okay.
Yeah, so I have that. So my arrow goes out of this analog out into that device. Now, what the problem is with going live is now I've introduced a slight delay between the audio and the video, right? The audio comes in first, and then the video comes in second. Ecamm Live has a mic delay, so I put it on 4 or 5 frames, and it syncs up pretty well.
Okay, that's totally cool. I had no idea. So I'm a little lost. I'd love to see a picture, but so out of the UA arrow into the
Scarlett,
the Scarlett,
analog out.
and what is getting introduced into it through the Scarlett?
Well, I have Skype is going through the Scarlett. The Skype audio that I'm listening to from you is going through the Scarlett. Anything I play back on my computer is also in the Scarlett. So now I have 3 separate things. I have my audio from my Arrow. I have Skype audio in the Scarlett, and I have anything I play back, a video or something I play back, is also in the Scarlett.
Now, is it possible through some sort of software routing that you could take the audio from Skype and patch it virtually into the UA mixing console software?
Yes, I can do that. I've found an issue with using the Arrow for that, though, because if I use the Arrow for Skype and stuff, there's something weird that goes on, and I get a direct line, and I get the process line, and there's some kind of a flanging thing.
Yeah.
And I don't have control over the direct line. And I've talked to UA about this, and they keep saying, well, it's because the software you're using doesn't control it. I said, well, I don't know why. But anyway, I went through a whole process back and forth with them. So this is why I do it this way. This way I have better control over my audio, the guest audio, and playback audio. So there's something weird with the Arrow and the Thunderbolt using that. It just sends 2 signals, and I can't turn the one off, and I've tried. And I would tell them, look, I can unplug the mic and it goes silent, but if I plug the mic back in and everything's muted, it's still getting signal somehow, and it's not the process signal. So that's why I don't do that. And I don't know if they're going to be able to fix that, or they keep saying it's the software. That, Skype, it's not meant for Skype. They said it's not meant for Skype. It's not meant for streaming. It's meant for DAWs. And in DAWs, it doesn't have that issue. So that's what they told me.
I know that in recording software, there's a thing where you can monitor the channel that's coming in, and I get confused.
Right, and that's what Skype doesn't have, and that's what they were telling me. This is not meant for Skype. It's not meant for. I don't know why, but so I just use the analog out. Takes care of the problem.
Yeah. So I think we were talking about this, but I don't think we've said this during the live broadcast, but before we hit record. I kind of believe that we are sort of in what I'm calling, and I literally just, it dawned on me last night when I downloaded OBS and started poking around at it, and I was able to do virtually nothing with it because I'm not that smart. But
no, you're pretty damn smart. I don't know why you always say that.
Well, it takes me forever to learn things. It really does, and it's probably because what I'm calling, what we're experiencing here, like the third wave of broadcasting. When I started in the early 80s in television, I literally sat in a room that cost $1 million. The switching hardware that I sat in front of was $150,000. The video recorders that we recorded to were the size of a refrigerator, a large refrigerator, not the one you have in your college dorm.
Right.
And these recorders were easily $100,000 a piece. Everything was insanely expensive, and it took everything to be able to do what we were doing. And they were horrible shows. The resolution was low. they looked bad. There's nothing that I would say, oh boy, I loved those shows that I worked on. No, they were bad. They were really bad. And then in the early 90s, the folks at NewTek, who we mentioned earlier, they
Right.
invented the video toaster, and they brought all of that to the desktop. And I'm going to call that the second wave of broadcasting. But this third wave of broadcasting, we're now at to the point where we can do all of this not only on the desktop, but we're doing it all in software. I know that I was able to almost, using the OBS software, create a 3-camera show, one using this camera,
Right.
this is the, what do they call it? The FaceTime camera on my iMac Pro. And then I have another camera over here on my LG monitor. And then I have I ran out yesterday to buy this little Logitech, mainly because I know that I have 2 of these somewhere in the office, but I couldn't
Right.
find. Felt like an idiot. And I was able to create like a 3-camera show, almost.
Right. Right.
I couldn't get it to go anywhere, but I was able to dissolve and cut, and like we're to the point where we can route all these things internal as software. And that is what I'm calling the third wave of broadcasting. I remember when Final Cut Classic first came out, I was very down on it. I didn't care about it at all. Partly because I had literally just the year before spent $30,000 on a Media 100 XR.
Okay. Yeah.
It was the high end, whatever it was, very expensive, and it had a hardware card, and because of that hardware card, it could do real time dissolves. Well, 20 years ago when Final Cut first came out, the computers were infinitely slower than even our phones, and to do a dissolve, it would have to render it. And I was very anti-render. I don't want to render anything. I'm a broadcaster. I work much faster than that. I'm not going to wait for a computer. But Apple knew that the computers were just going to get faster and faster and faster. And so the concept of rendering something is really kind of inconsequential. I think what they didn't take into consideration is that resolutions would get bigger and bigger and bigger. But, that's a whole nother story. Now we're fighting with 8K, resolutions. But this ability now to do all of this, not only in a NLE, but live, to me, it's fascinating. And I think that both you and I are kind of straddling the fence of hardware solutions versus pure software solutions. I bet you there's a way to fix the thing the problem that you're having with the flanging and the delay and the Bears oh my
Right.
in software, but because we've been doing this a long time, we have all kinds of boxes around us.
Right.
Like I can solve this. And I think that from a troubleshooting standpoint, we default to what we know, right? So my solution is always going to be, oh, well, what box do I need to buy?
Right.
What thing, there must be a thing. And I think that when I look at the next generation of, and I say this ever so slightly condescendingly, but mostly out of affection, the kids. When you look at the next generation of kids that are coming up that are doing this, their minds do not default to the hardware solution. They're more inclined to say, well, what plugin, patch, routing application do I need to solve this problem inside the screen of my computer? And
right. No, I agree.
That fascinates me. It absolutely fascinates me because I watch what you do. I was flipping through one of your shows a couple of weeks ago, and you were doing. So how do you do the comments from?
I'll do one right now. I just added it. So this is Ecamm Live. We got a Tony Oddjobs. He comes on these a lot of times.
Hey,
He
Tony.
says, is it best to edit all podcasts in Final Cut Pro, or is there a better app? Now, if
we will get to that, but I want
we'll get to that.
comment up first.
So that's that specific one, see, I have two pieces of software. I have Ecamm Live, but I'm also streaming through Restream.io, which broadcasts it to, that is a subscription.
This, yeah.
That
Yeah.
broadcasts is to FaceTime, YouTube, and the other one, Periscope, simultaneously. So we're
Wow.
on all three live right now. So that's a second piece of software. Both of those have comments and reactions. I can't add them with Restream, but I can add them with Ecamm Live.
Interesting. So what Tony's question was, what do I edit podcasts in?
He said, is it best to edit all podcasts in Final Cut Pro, or is there better apps? That's what he said.
Here's what I'll tell you, and I'm gonna use your words against you, Tony. You said, is it best? If you go back, my initial comment was to design a workflow that is sustainable. If you want to get into podcasting or streaming or whatever, develop a workflow that you can continue doing. So it's best to do it in a way that is sustainable. Now, if you know Final Cut, you can certainly edit a podcast in Final Cut.
Absolutely.
I choose the grill. I actually record it and edit it in Adobe Audition, mainly for the fun of it. I kind of took it on as a challenge, like, I'm going to learn a piece of software. It's okay. It's all right. I don't think it's better than Final Cut, but I know that a lot of people, it's sort of a default workflow for a lot of people. So I kind of wanted to learn that. And I've been doing it. I've been doing my podcast using Audition since the beginning of the Digital Cinema Cafe, which was the first show that I produced with Alex McLean. That being said, we have a client here at Slice. One of our clients just decided out of the blue, well, we're going to start doing a podcast. And I've done 4 episodes of their podcast, and they do all the recording and producing. They just send me files. They're doing, I'll say this, worse than a double ender, because it's not a conversation. It's Richard reading his script. Hey, Chris.
Right.
Right. Glad to have you here this week. Tell me, what are you doing this week at your office?
Right. You can tell them. Yeah.
Then I take my script. Thanks for asking, Richard. We're having a great week here. Not a lot of work to do. And it's literally 2 guys reading 2 scripts in 2 different cities and 2 different sessions. And I have to sandwich the thing together, like slice it together. I've been telling them, look, you got to get over. Now, that being said, it's a financial thing. They have lawyers they have to worry about. They have to worry about inferring certain things. They're not allowed to say, you should buy Apple stock today. But they can say, analysts are saying that Apple stock might be a good, whatever. So they have to be very careful about what they say.
Exactly.
And I do that in Final Cut, and it actually goes really well. And I may want to rethink what I'm doing with my shows. So I think the best software to cut it in is the one that you can do it the quickest in. I have no reason why one is better than the other. I can use all the same plugins in both applications. And I think when you're to kind of get that sort of podcasty sound, that big full sound, I mean, that's why we see all these idiots with microphones right in front of their face, as opposed to just wearing a lav or a boom, out of frame, because we all want to, sound like that. So, so you're always doing things to maximize your gain, brick wall limiters and getting it as nice and loud as you can, but still sound good and not distorty and crap.
Exactly. Because most audios, the people like the audio ones much better than the video ones. Back when podcasts first started, the first one I listened to was Daily Source Code, was Adam Curry's podcast. He was the very first one. Fascinated me. And then that fall, Don and Drew came out, which is something that Adam took under his wing for a while with this company. And then in the spring, I started my other podcast, Roots Rock Radio, and that was actually before Apple had a podcast section in iTunes.
Right.
They came out in June of that year with their first podcast section. So it was all audio. And like you said, you got to kind of figure out how you're going to do it. When I first started that one, 8 hours every Saturday I'd spent
Wow.
producing it. 8 hours because I had to get the music. I had to contact the people that made the music. I had to do my own dialogue, mix it all together. And I did it every week for a while, for about a year.
Wow.
But I don't do that anymore. It's too much work. It's way too
Yeah.
much work.
It needs to be a sustainable thing
Right.
because in order to build an audience, I always tell people, I said, look, podcasting is a bizarre relationship that you create with the listener. Um, and you want to be there for them, just like any good friend. If you have a friend, I told this story to somebody the other day. If you have a friend that lives around the corner, and nobody lives like this anymore, I understand that. But let's say you have a friend that lives around the corner, and you reach into your refrigerator, grab a couple of long necks, and you walk around the corner, and he's in his garage, and he's tooling on something, and you sit down and you go, "Hey, brought your beer, let's have a chat." Or nobody's gonna say
Right.
let's have a chat, but
Right.
it's just that you want to be able to do that. Now, if I grab those beers out of my fridge, walk around the corner, and you're gone, you're not there, all of a sudden there's something wrong with our relationship. And so it's the same thing when somebody logs on Tuesday morning or whatever and expecting to find another episode and you're not there,
Right.
you've let them down. And
Yes.
now you're a bad friend.
Yes.
And so you have to create a workflow that's sustainable so that you can be a good friend to those people because they want to put their headphones on or log on their phone in their car during their crappy commute, and they want to have their friend there. So
Absolutely.
it has to be sustainable, and that means whatever you can do, Tony, to make it consistent.
Absolutely. So I use people that know me. I use Logic for almost all my audio. And there's a couple of reasons. Number one is I came from an audio background. I didn't touch a computer until the late 90s. And I did all tape, reel to reel audio mixing. I did that all through the 80s into the 90s. I had my own recording studio. The very first time I did any computer audio was a group I was mixing locally. And I said, instead of mastering to half-inch tape like I normally do, let me try this new digital stuff. So I got a Macintosh and I got Digital Performer, and what a difference. I could get such higher levels. The compression emulation, even in those days, was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I have all that hardware, but it's much better. So my background is audio as far as editing goes. Video I started in the late 90s, and that was the deck-to-deck with the toaster and stuff.
Yeah.
So I use Logic. I just like it better. For audio, I like tracks. I like doing the tracks, and I like having, I can put a master compressor on this track and then master EQ and put them to a bus and all that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, when I was talking to Michael Cioni on Friday, he did his album in Final Cut Pro. He has an album coming out. I was kind of surprised, then I asked him, I said, what would you tell Apple they need to do for audio in Final Cut Pro? And he says a downline bus, which is
It's
basically a
interesting.
mixer.
I heard him saying that, and I heard him saying that, and I almost chimed in on the chatter, but it was too complicated to type. So I mentioned earlier, I've been producing a podcast for one of my clients. Not producing, I've been
Right.
posting a
Sure.
podcast for one of my clients, and did we determine I can't show you a screen, can I? Can I show you my screen?
No.
Okay, so if I could, I would open it up and show it to you.
Now I can, you know what? I can show the Skype. Well, let me see if I can do the Skype window. I'll make the Skype window bigger, and I think I can show the Skype window. Let me just check and see real quick.
I'm going to open
Yes.
up my client's project, and
Yes,
I
I
can.
can. I can show that. I can show that.
You can show what?
I can show the Skype window. If you do screen sharing or whatever on the Skype window, I can then show the Skype window in my interface.
Okay, let me open up an episode of this podcast. Here's the last episode I did. Now let's close this. That's you. Okay, and I'll open this. All right, now back to Skype. This is compelling video. So what do I do in Skype to share my start recording, blur background, hold?
There's some screen sharing because Michael did it. Michael Cioni did it on the Skype. I'm not sure where he did it, but he got it somewhere.
Let's see. I'm not going to spend too much time. Skype. All right, let's try this then. This is going to be a little funky. Am I off? I'm going to go dead for a second. I'm going to change cameras.
Okay.
All right, so there's you. I'm going to move you out of the way.
Okay.
So let's see. Here's my timeline. Okay. So what you can see here is, first of all, I have little slugs. Okay. Now, I don't want anybody to hear this.
Ray is.
Yeah, okay, I just won't hit play. Okay, so let me go. I need to turn this off because I need to see that window. All right, I'm seeing this in a very tiny window. So the blue line is the primary storyline. That's the main host.
Right.
The orange bits are the interview that I had to slice in. I put slugs in to say, what the different parts of the show are.
Sure.
And of course, the little green guys are little, excuse my cough there, audio stings.
Yep.
Now, what I do is I take that whole thing and I create a compound clip out of it. Collapse the audio component. I create a compound clip out of it. And then when I expand those audio components, I can now apply a single, compressor, whatever, to each voice, right?
Right.
A single gain stage here to the interviewer, E. I leave the music alone. But then what I did is I went and put on this little slice right here. That represents the sum of the entire compound clip. So these three stages,
right,
being summed together to here,
right,
and at that point, I'm able. Well, not on this one. Let's go to another one. At that point, I'm able to put a master compressor on. So I am summing these three tracks or rolls together. And then on the master compound clip, I'm able to put one more compressor.
Right. Yes.
That kind of gives you what Cioni was trying to get.
Well, but that's what you're saying, kind of. It doesn't, it's not as efficient as working in a, I mean, it's not supposed to be, okay? A digital audio workstation is meant to be working with audio. And Final Cut Pro is a nonlinear editor meant to be working with video. I don't expect Final Cut Pro to have the same capabilities as Pro Tools, have the same capabilities as Digital Performer or Logic. I don't expect that. But the fact that you have to jump in and out of compound clips and stuff.
Yeah, I got you.
But so it's just, it's look, can I do a podcast in Final Cut? Absolutely. I have tried it a few times. There's a couple of, the scrolling timeline thing is a pain in the ass for me, not having it. And, here, when I'm working with an hour and a half project, I don't want to be doing this constantly, back and forth, back and forth. Logic, it's dead center all the time, the audio. And I'm looking at waveforms, not video.
Yeah, I got you.
There's a difference. So but there's other things too. It's just, Logic doesn't have the live skimmer. That drives me crazy. I got to click things like you do in all these. So it's a trade-off.
So the other thing that I've done recently is in one of these power blackout brownouts, and I'm not going to actually blame the brownout, but I will. It killed one of my mixers. It killed my old Mackie mixer. There's something wrong with the power supply. I don't know what it is. I turn it on and it sounds like a bad drum machine. So I had to get a new mixer, and I recently got. And let me go back to my camera here. Got to figure out how to do this. I'm not one of these geniuses with their OBS. So if I change the camera and then close that, it'll pop up. So I recently added this to my arsenal. This is a PreSonus. It's called a 1602. 16 for 16 input, 0 for 0 buses, but it does have 4 aux buses. These, out of cable, these blue faders are not groups. They are actually aux outs.
Okay.
So it has 4 aux outs. And then the 2 in the 1602 is the, stereo.
Right.
But the nice thing about it is it has a thing called what they call a fat channel, and every input across the top there on all those LEDs, every input has its own gate, its own compressor,
That's excellent. Yeah.
And so very hardware intensive, costly, but it allows me to put a gate and a compressor on my mic, much the same way that your system is doing.
Yes.
But
yes.
mine just takes up more room on the desk.
And you're doing it in hardware.
I'm doing it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. These are not plugins. This is a piece of hardware. But the reason, and I was very interested in what you were talking about, and I looked into it, and I needed something that was very tactile because I'm not the only person that sits here.
Right.
It has to be, it has to be something that somebody can reach over and go, make it louder in the room, make it quieter in the room. They need to have faders. And although it's not labeled, about half of those faders are actually being used for various input sources in the room because this is not just a podcasting room, it is an edit suite. So anyway, I'm going to put my camera down. You might want to take my camera off your feed for a moment. I'll switch back to the camera. Just trying to make it a little smoother here. But we're like a bunch of monkeys hitting on a slab in 2001. What is this technology? Oh, and then if I close this, you'll be back, or I'll be back. All right.
There you go. Yeah.
Anyway, and then, but again, very similar to what you're doing. When I do an actual podcast, I initiate the call on my laptop.
Right.
I then take the audio out of the laptop, and it comes into the mixer.
Okay.
I can use the mixer to take in with the new one now. I can take the individual tracks and feed them to a second computer. I'm actually using 2 computers.
Okay.
And on the second computer, that's where I record everything into Audition. And I can record my mic separate from your feed.
Right.
If I was doing playback and, clips and stuff, I could record those separately, and they would actually record into separate tracks.
Right.
Using the USB output of the PreSonus into the iMac Pro. And at that point, when my voice and your voice are different, I'm notorious for cutting somebody off. I think probably the number one comment I get from listeners is, "Stop cutting people off. You're annoying." Like, okay, I'm just half of it is Skype. I will say that half of it is Skype delay.
Exactly.
Exactly. I think you're done, and I jump in, but you're not done. So anyway.
So I'm curious, when I just do an pure audio recording, I use Audio Hijack Pro, and I can also separate my microphone from the Skype call. They record 2 separate tracks.
Right. And I can do that.
Okay.
There have been times when I've been on the road and I still needed to record something, and I just use the Skype recorder, and that will work. Again, being older, we tend to solve our problems using old school thinking. And so to me, it's like, oh yeah, we got another computer mixer, and we overcomplicate things.
Sometimes, yes.
We overcomplicate things. And, I always tell people like I will gladly tell you how I do it, but don't sit there and badmouth me and tell me I'm an idiot because I'm not doing it the way you would do it. I'm just telling you the way I do it.
Right.
And it works for me because the call machine is not trying to do anything else.
Right.
Then the other thing that I do is I create a mix minus, which I may not need to do. I create a mix minus using the one of the aux buses, and that's what I send in to the Skype machine.
Why
Yeah,
don't you explain to people what a mix minus is for our
well,
viewers?
I will gladly do that, but the more I do it, the more I wonder if it's even necessary with something like Skype. So I'm not using a mix minus to talk to you. So a mix minus is this. Um, Richard is 3,000 miles from me, and there's inherently a certain amount of delay. So in my headphones, I'm listening to me because why wouldn't I want to listen to me? But I also, unfortunately, have to listen to Richard too. And
Exactly.
the feed that's feeding my headphones is the same feed that I'm actually recording over here in Audition, but I'm also sending it into Skype. Now, there should be you should be able to hear yourself from me, but I think Skype actually is smart enough to go, yeah, no, don't send that thing. And I don't know how it does that. And that annoys me that I don't understand how it works. I know that historically I need to create a mix minus. The mix minus is the mix minus the potential problem. So when I do a podcast using the second computer, because again, I don't do this all the time,
Right.
I take the output of my Mac, my playback Mac or my record Mac and me and just those two things and send those into Skype. I don't send the Skype call back into Skype. I record it, I listen to it, but I don't send it over here. So what I do is I use an aux bus on the Personas and I say, okay, you need to hear me, turn that pod up.
Right.
Need to hear anything that I play back off my computer because my show it's a free for all. I might say, oh, hey, I want to play something. Yeah, okay, hold on. I should have set this up, but I don't. And then so I take the output of my computer and I send that to you if you're on the Skype call. And then that way you can hear what I want you to hear, but you don't have to hear yourself. Now, do you create a mix minus?
No.
See, I think Skype is just magic and I've been working way too hard.
Yeah, well, the mix minus basically is you're eliminating something from the mix. You're not having everything go into the mix. So if you don't want your own voice in the mix, you create a mix minus and take your voice out and send that feed over to whoever's listening or whatever. But I'm not doing that in Skype. Skype's just doing it itself somehow.
Yeah, and I think that as I sit here, like literally, I was thinking about it this morning. I was in the shower, and I was like, oh, I didn't set up the mix minus for the call to Richard because I'm not using the laptop that I normally do the call on.
Right.
Use this camera. It's a better camera, and it's framed better. And I thought, well, I've done it. I've done this before. I did the show with Felipe a couple weeks ago. I was like, how come that's not an issue? Like,
Good question. I don't know.
It's a good question, and I don't know. And the Skype people are smarter than me, and it pains me to say that.
Anytime there's a problem with Skype, I always got to tell people, remember Microsoft bought Skype.
Microsoft bought Skype. Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
I know.
So we got a couple comments from Nathan McAvoy. He said, I think it would be interesting to see Apple add a sort of roll summing view in the main timeline rather than having to first compound clip everything. I think, I don't think they're done with audio. I really don't.
I don't think they are. I think that things, sometimes they come in stages. Sometimes Apple just holds their cards very close to their vest until they're like, and here is the feature.
Like 10.5.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what the heck's coming in 10.5. I mean, I don't know anything. A lot of time there's rumors this, rumors that. There's been like radio silence about 10.5. I mean, everybody talks about collaboration. Whether that happens or not, I don't know.
If the rule of thumb with Apple is if they know, they won't talk. And if they talk, they don't know.
Right.
Because nobody at Apple wants to be fired for leaking information.
Right.
If they know, they won't talk. And if they talk, they don't know.
But they're also there's beta testers and stuff, though, that are not directly Apple employees. But I'm
Yeah,
just saying,
very
sometimes,
carefully vetted.
sometimes there's, I mean, there's things that we kind of think are coming, and we kind of hear rumors that are kind of reliable from reliable sources, but I haven't heard anything about 10.5 other than people think there's going to be some kind of collaboration. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know, but
Well, we've been collaborating by using, transfer libraries and all kinds of
right,
hacks and workarounds and stuff
right.
like that. And I was with somebody just recently. I can't remember who it was. Oh, it was my friend Alex McLean, who's actually turned into quite the Final Cut aficionado.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. He's a colorist primarily, but he started doing a little bit of cutting. And, last year at Summit, it was when they played the Frame.io. Frame.io jumped into the extensions game in a
Right.
big way, right?
Yep.
And Frame.io had their new their their video about extensions.
Right.
Alex actually cut that for Emory.
Oh, okay.
So, and he really enjoys Final Cut 10. And we were talking extensively about collaboration and would it be, um, what would we want to see? And how would we implement it? Do you do like a Google Doc where there's multiple cursors? Could there be two playheads? Could there be my playhead and your playhead? Uh, I tell you, and I give this out freely, and I welcome somebody to make this as a product. All I ask is that you give it to me for free. Uh, I have said for years that with the advent of wireless mice, why doesn't somebody make a system extension? Do they still have those? Some sort of app,
Right.
call it an app, where you pair it with a wireless mouse, and now you, as the producer, sitting in the back of the room over there, you have your own mouse. You can point at anything you want on my screen, but you can't click on anything.
So no clicking, just pointing.
Yeah, I'm still driving, but when you say, hey, can we make this part up here a little darker? And maybe your mouse pointer is a different color, maybe it's
Sure.
larger,
Sure.
whatever. I think that would be a brilliant app. I don't know how many people would want it, but certainly, like open up a Google Doc and share it with somebody, and you can have multiple cursors. I can be changing data in a spreadsheet, and you could be working in a different cell. Like we could do that. Why
The only
can't
thing the only thing I would add to that is put the ability to shock the person with the mouse in the back of the room if you wanted to. A little shock button.
Whoa. Okay, sorry, I'll leave it up. I got it. So anyway, yeah, I don't know about 10.5. I don't know when we're going to see 10.5. I was a little taken back by the 10.4.
4.7.
And I give no weight toward the possibility of we're not going to see a 10.5 at Summit.
I think we are. I think
I
we're
don't
going to see a preview. What are they going to show us?
a preview.
Yeah. But they did that with 10.4. They previewed 10.4 and didn't come out till 2 months later.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The thing is, they got to listen. They got to show us something. They can't just rehash 10.4.7. That doesn't make any sense. People coming from around the world to get special.
Richard, they are not coming to see stuff at Apple. They want to see stuff at Apple. They are coming to learn. We come to learn, and the stuff at Apple, that's the icing on the cake. It's not the cake.
But every
They
Creative Summit so far,
said a
Apple
little.
has shown us something new on every one. 4 of them, always something new, not something that's been out for 6 weeks or whatever. So I don't expect that to be changing.
I don't know. I don't. I find it easier to not be disappointed when I don't put a lot of hope in that. It's like I don't care. My computer. Honestly, Final Cut works great for us. Better collaboration might be better. I'm not so sure if we didn't have better infrastructure in our office that collaboration wouldn't be better. But I mean, we do. We get a lot of work done. We
Oh,
do.
absolutely. No, absolutely. I do too.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they'll tease 10.5 and it comes out in January or something
Yeah,
like that.
could be. It could come out. I'm not saying. Here's the good thing about 10.4.7 to me. They got all this stuff out of the way, so it's not part of the 10.5 update. They got the whole Metal 2 thing out of the way. They got the other couple of things that they did out of the way, so that's not confusing when 10.5 or not. Part of what 10.5 is. It's already there.
So maybe 10.4.7 was just a Catalina patch. Like
And Mac
10.4.6 won't,
Pro.
10.4.6 won't run in Catalina. Catalina was coming out.
Okay.
Final Cut team can't control what the OS team is doing. So it's, shit. Okay, we'll call it 10.4.7, but we're not quite there. And now we'll do 10.5. So yeah, it's a possibility.
Yeah, and the other thing is the Mac Pro.
Yeah.
I mean,
Definitely in the demo room after they show us whatever they're going to show us, there will be, I can assure you there's going to be Mac Pros there. We'll be able to touch them and take our pictures with them and
right, do our selfies with the Mac Pro.
touch
There
the
you go.
$1,000 stand and the whole thing.
No,
Yeah.
but the weird thing is about 10.4.7, and everybody, even in the Final Cut Pro documentation, they say this with the Mac Pro, with the Mac Pro, with the Mac Pro. Well, the Mac Pro's still not out. It's still not out after all this time. But they keep on talking about it. When I see videos and they say, well, this is for the Mac Pro. This is for the Mac Pro, the new version of Final Cut. So it's interesting that they haven't released the Mac Pro, but they did release that version. But I think, like I said, I'm glad that the new update with the new software update with 10.4.7 is not part of 10.5. It's out before 10.5 comes out. We know 10.5 is coming out. It's going to be 2 years since 10.4 was released in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Normal update cycle between 10.2, 10.3, 10.3, 10.4 is between 14 and 18 months. It was 14, 16, and 18. Now it's been 2 years. So they're up to something.
Richard, you've done your homework. I'm impressed.
There you go. Well, whatever. It's fun. I mean, this is like when we get to the summit. It's getting together, as Phil Hodgett says, with Final Cut Pro family reunion, the annual family reunion. I love it.
It really is, and I know that we're only like 2 weeks away now.
Yep, less than 2 weeks, or 2 weeks from today, actually. Or
yeah,
no, tomorrow.
So, so if you're still on the fence, I know that you can still use Grill 19 to get 10% off. I don't know if there's room still available. But hey, if you just want to come crash the party, get a room and hang out in the lobby. I'm sure FMC is going to kill me for saying that.
Well, the thing is, I think, you could hang out there, but you can't get into the sessions. But the other thing is they used to offer an exhibitor's pass for the exhibit thing on Friday night. They used to offer that standalone, like for $40 or something. You can come to that. I didn't see that this year, but they used to.
You know what they're doing different this year that they haven't done in the past? They have a way where if you can buy access to videos of all of the sessions.
Yeah, well, you can't buy them. You can rent them for 90 days.
I was going to say you get them. You get them for a short period of time.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty interesting. They kind of warned us as presenters, "Don't be stupid. We're recording you."
Yes, and that's absolutely true. But it's $400, which is half the price of coming to the summit.
Well, there's other hacks. Nobody's ever talked about this, and I don't think I've even said it publicly. But before Jeffrey and I got hired, I guess you'd say, asked to present, which immediately gets you in.
Right.
I was actually considering splitting the cost of buying a table at the expo night, because you can buy a table at the expo night, which gives you 2 passes.
Okay.
For less than the cost
of 2 passes.
2 passes.
There you go.
And so just have like the Chris Fenwick table, just hanging out, and so like it could be like me and McLean or me and Jeffrey, whatever. And just say, yeah, we're presenters. What are you showing? Not much. We're just hanging out. I just wanted a place to I wanted a table to put my drink on, right. and then you're there for the rest of the time. So there's a summit hack I will I will lay out there. I don't know if they would accept it, but it was something I was seriously considering doing.
So
But
we got a comment from Eric Emmerich says, I'll be getting the XDR display.
oh yeah, yeah. That's I tell you, I think I don't know that there is a Mac Pro. I will tell you this: there is absolutely not a Mac Pro in the immediate future for us. But I'm not against it.
Right.
I think that in the next 2 months we will be the public at large will be convinced whether or not it's something that has to sit on their desk or not.
No, I absolutely agree. And I'm not going to be rushing out and buying the very first one, but I will be buying, I'm pretty sure I'll be buying one in 2020 versus buying an iMac Pro. That's the I'm ready to buy. I bought a 2016 MacBook Pro. I sold that recently on eBay. I got a 2019 MacBook Pro that I'll keep for 2 or 3 years. I got a 2017 iMac that I'm doing this broadcast on. It's within the next year I'll be selling it, and I'll need a replacement. I'm thinking, okay, do I spend $8,000 on an iMac Pro or do I spend $8,000 on a Mac Pro? And to me, the Mac Pro is something that I like a lot better. I think it'll last longer.
Yeah, one of the things that we're always struggling with is whatever we do, we basically do times 3.
Okay.
So, we have 3 suites. We like to have a lot of parity, a good parity.
Sure, absolutely.
And so it gets stupid expensive when you say, "Oh yeah, just ship me over 3 Mac Pros and $3,000 displays."
Sure, absolutely. Well, the other thing is I think there's going to be a new iMac Pro coming out. So, I'll weigh it at that point, but I'm still leaning towards the Mac Pro.
What do you think a new iMac Pro would be?
It's a new processors, new graphics capabilities, increased RAM if you need that much RAM, similar. I don't know. Maybe it'll be something. Don't know.
I have a tech
there will
question.
be one.
Is there a box? Is there a Thunderbolt 3 hub? Does that exist? Like what if I just want 4 more Thunderbolt 3 ports? Reliable hub that I can plug into the back to one of my Thunderbolt 3.
I don't think you can divide, have multiplied the Thunderbolt 3 ports that way. You can have a pass through, but I don't think you can multiply them. I've never seen one because you got 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports on the iMac Pro, right?
Not enough.
Not enough.
Yeah, not enough. It's stupid. Yeah, there's I'm shopping for a better solution to this. This is a USB 3, hub.
Yes.
There's some companies that make powered ones that, like literally you have to plug them into the wall. And that's my next quest is I need to find something like that. I just have, literally if it wasn't for the additional ports on the back of the second display.
Right.
And that's a good point. That is a hub. So that plugs into the iMac Pro with a Thunderbolt 3 cable, and it has 2 or 3 more additional ports on the back of that. So, but half of those I'm using as USB 3.
So I have something similar to what you just showed, and it's a 4 USB splitter. It clicks on the bottom of my iMac screen. It actually clicks on and plugs into the back of one of the USB ports on the back.
So you have ports sticking out the front?
4.
I'd like to see that.
It actually is a click. It's a tight click, and the back is a prong that goes into one of the USB ports, and it works really well.
Yeah, send me a link to that on Amazon.
I will.
That'd be interesting. Hey, I have a job. I got to get to work here. It's 9:00 in the morning. But I think this has been interesting. I don't know. I was interested. I don't know if anybody else thinks this is interesting.
No, I'm sure people are interested. We've got people tuning in. We had 4 people waiting before we went live.
Just a couple of old guys talking about how they can't figure out technology anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But we talk. We're both audio guys too. That's one of the things that people they get to get involved with video and stuff, and they forget about the audio portion. I see that all the time.
Yeah, and you have 2 ears and there's 2 speakers and 1 screen. So
that's right.
Get it right.
That's right.
All right. How do we say goodbye?
We're just going to say goodbye. Thank you, Chris. I will see you in a couple weeks at the Creative Summit.
Thanks for doing this CrossCast.
It's CrossCast, exactly.
Probably have to do it again. The thing is, I don't know how this is gonna survive as an audio only show.
You might have to edit.
Oh, hey, you just ruined my day. All right.
All right, man.
I'll see you in a while,
See you in a
Richard.
couple weeks. Bye bye.